So it is the A to Z, our punk and new wave, and it belongs to Rob Hughes, and we have started now with one of the aforementioned killers, which would be Killing Joke. What a band, Bobbert.
Tremendous, and something of an anomaly in not just in the punk world, in the rock world, in that here was a band with no weak links at all. Everybody played their part, didn't they? There were kind of four constituent parts going on there.
Fantastic band, absolutely amazing, and we'll get to the whys and wherefores of why they're so good in a short while, but they formed in October 1978.
Yeah.
And it was Big Paul Ferguson, and he was drumming in Matt Stagger's band.
That's right.
And Jazz Coleman was on keys, and then they left to form Killing Joke.
They did.
So there's only the two of them at this point.
Yeah, okay. And so then they put adverts in the national press, I believe, didn't they?
Melody Maker, as usual, I think.
Yeah, okay. And then before you knew it, Kevin Walker came along, a.k.a. Geordie, on guitar, and then Martin Glover, as well, who Youth, of course, on bass. So there you have the band suddenly forming, 1978, playing the first gig supporting the Ruts and the Selector, didn't they? In where was it? In Whitcomb Lodge in Cheltenham.
They did, and if you look at it, there was a little bit of experience in the band before they got together. I believe that Youth was also in the band The Rage, who opened for the adverts, but also 4B2, which was Jimmy Lydon's band, John Lydon's brother. Okay. But if you just stop there, right?
You have.
I have. And you look at the four component parts. So you've got Jazz Coleman, who is one of the most unsettling and charismatic performers ever. You've got Big Paul Ferguson, who for me is one of the best drummers ever. I just think he's he's like Terry Chambers from XTC.
Yeah.
He's just remarkable. And you've got Geordie, who is, again, one of my favourite guitarists ever, and he plays the guitar like nobody else, but it looks effortless. I would call him a genius. And Youth, who is not only a great bass player, but has obviously got a fantastic pair of ears from all the production work that he got involved with years down the line.
Yeah.
So this isn't even a band who kind of grew up together and went through everything together and came out of it the other side all being brilliant. They just, from adverts in the papers and stuff, and just falling into other people's bands. And they just arrived as he finished article, didn't they?
And they just found themselves, didn't they? And then the thing was, right from the start, they were adamant they wanted to take control of everything. So they didn't want to sign to a label. They wanted, what do? You start your own, Malicious Damage. Okay, they wanted to start their own label. Couldn't really afford it, so you have to get a loan. But this is the way they wanted to go, and they were very sort of headstrong about that, weren't they? I mean, the labels were calling, no doubt about it. Island came along, and EG, of course, which was King Crimson and Eno's label, eventually signed them. But, you know, part of the Malicious Damage thing itself, so they kind of signed the imprint at the same time. So they still had that autonomy, in a way.
And it's great, because you look at bands like Crass, and they think, where do we fit into everything? I know Crass were on Small Wonder to begin with, but then they think we don't really belong in the part of the music industry that we're in at the moment, so we need to create our own. And Killing Joke, as you say, just did exactly the same thing. And you would reckon, I mean, to have been there at that first gig that you mentioned, supporting the Ruts and the Selector, because anybody who went on after Killing Joke must have felt it.
Absolutely. How do you follow that? Really, And so, first album came out in 1980, then they Killing Joke, then What's This For? Revelations was like the third album, recorded with Connie Plank. So they had ambition as well. They knew where they were going. And of course, they had idiosyncrasies at the same time, didn't they? So 1982, famously, they moved to Iceland.
Yes, they did. I mean, we're just moving along a little bit fast here, Bob, just because I was going to say, like, Killing Joke, you're talking about them setting the stall out.
Yeah.
But the Killing Joke, as they describe it, is being either like people sat there watching Monty Python then eventually realising that the joke was on them.
Yeah.
Or the other thing being the soldier in the trenches in the First World War who then think, hang on a minute, the bloke who sent me here is sat in Westminster and I'm going to be killed in a moment. So they were already really political and agitating, weren't they?
Yeah.
Which they've carried on right through. Even the artwork for the first album is a silhouette of a inspired by a photograph of kids being tear gassed in Northern Ireland by the British Army. So all of it is there to be had in it. They weren't along for the easy ride, were they?
Not at all. And there's a famous one of the Pope as well, and then look through the...
Well, it's not the Pope, apparently. It's a German abbot, is what I've read today. I always thought it was a Pope, but he's walking through the line of German soldiers, and they're all doing the Hitler salute, aren't they? So
absolutely. I mean, if they did have a manifesto, as they say to themselves, it was to define the exquisite beauty of the atomic age in terms of style, sound, and form. So that was it, and they kind of stuck to that, or tried to at least. I suppose the big commercial moment was like sort of 1985, wasn't it, with Nighttime and like 80s and Love Like Blood. That was where but they still managed to keep that sort of big visceral sound, didn't it? That big booming sound.
But they had hit records, but they didn't sell out. If you listen to Love Like Blood and 80s, they're just phenomenal, meaty records that don't sound like anything else. And of course, the famous case being that Kurt Cobain used to write fan mail to Killing Joke, didn't he?
Yeah.
And then he wrote Come As You Are, which was a rip-off of 80s, and ended up giving Killing Joke some money. That's a story as they understand it.
I would say as well, just to add to that, there is worth as well hearing the Damned song Life Goes On, because there is from 1982, which predates 80s, which has a very similar riff.
Really?
Yeah.
Right, okay. Well, who's guilty then? But you did mention Iceland before. And, do you know, have you seen the documentary? What's it called? It's absolutely amazing.
Do you know, I've had it. It came out about 3 years ago now.
Yeah.
A documentary about Killing Joke, which I believe is great. I haven't watched it myself, but it covers that period, does it?
Oh, it covers it all. But, I mean, is it called the Resurrection and Death Show, or the Death and Resurrection Show, I think it might be called? But it is remarkable. And there are sections in there where there's footage of Killing Joke in Iceland. So Jazz went, and then Geordie followed him.
So, just to set it, I mean, Jazz was thought the apocalypse was coming. That was the official thing, wasn't it?
The ley lines.
Yeah,
and all
the
that
ley
kind
lines.
of
So
thing.
I went to Iceland, going to be safe there, and say Geordie followed him soon after.
And studying Aleister Crowley and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so then Big Paul went off with Youth. And then he thought, actually, no, I'll go to Iceland with them. So, do you know, what it did make me laugh, because we all know, we have discussed this before, we know, like, Youth is playing with Killing Joke now. I saw them not that long ago. They were just phenomenal. But the Status Quo famously split up. The bass player went to live in Australia, then they got back together again. Now, I don't think this was a precursor to that at all. I think it really was just some lunacy. But there's some footage in that documentary where Geordie and Jazz are talking about Jazz levitating while stood on a glacier in Iceland.
Oh, really?
It's kind of unnerving and a little bit funny at the same time,
Right,
because it's so bonkers.
We should mention, shouldn't we, that Youth formed brilliant in that time. That's Iceland, when he was away from Iceland.
Which is one of those great things where you just go on stage and say, hello, everybody, we're brilliant.
Yeah,
which is still a good gag now. And they're still going strong. We were just talking about this, the fact that they did a session for us, and it was the longest gestation of any session ever. Previously, people would go, do you know that Susie and the Banshees took 3 days to do a Peel session? This took a year.
Wow, a year.
So, Killing Joke just flattened all before them. And like I say, I went to see him play live at the Academy. I missed the Ritz gig. It was mind-blowing. Really, so amazing. So I am a huge fan. And all of the bands that claim, them to be an influence. You got Metallica, sadly, but Helmet, Nine Inch Nails, Jane's Addiction, Ministry, My Bloody Valentine. A massive list.
You can see it all, can't you? Certainly. So, from Britain over to the States then, with Lenny Kaye.